This is going to be a very short video in which we will cover how we can use variables to make your code more efficient, flexible and dynamic, which is always a good thing. We're going to cover a little bit on commenting to make sure we've got decent comments in our code so it's more readable and easier to understand. And finally, kind of to achieve the same goal, we're going to look at tabbing and then auto formatting of your code. Okay, end of the last video, we should have it placing 4 pickups in a loop. When I finished with you, we were just doing on the X value, and I left you the task of slightly changing it to do the Z axis. Okay, so let's pause this and go over and have a look at what that looks like. So here we are here. All I did to change it was add that line there and then use spawn Y position there. Okay, I just want to spend a bit of time tidying up this code because it's not necessarily the tidiest place to be right now. So the first thing I want to do is make it a little bit more dynamic. This 4 here is hard coded into our code, which is not necessarily the best way for it to be. So I'm going to create a new private variable. It only needs to be private, so it only needs to be accessed inside this. Script itself. It's going to be an integer, and I'm going to call it number of pickups. Okay, and we'll instantiate it with we'll go with 10 to start with. Okay, so now instead of doing a 4 there hard-coded in, I'm going to put that variable in there. So just to recap, what we've done is we've created a new private variable of type integer. We've given it a name of pickup, a number of pickups, and we've stored the number 10 in it. Okay, now down here we're using that number instead of the number 4. So if I save that now and I go back to my Unity and I play it, you can see now there are a number of pickups there. Okay, now if I go back into my code and I decide, hey, I don't want 10 anymore, I just want this to be an early level, so we're only going to have 5. If I save that and I go back into my game, play it, you can see that there are now only 5. Okay, so that is one of the most efficient and best ways of making your code slightly more dynamic and slightly more flexible, because at any time I want to make a change, I can just go up here and I can change this number. I think that it's important that we comment our code as well. So commenting is just a // We usually follow that by a space. And we want to write a description here that explains what these variables are. We're going to have a few variables here, so I'm not going to be specific to each line, but what does this group of variables do? And these variables set the way that the pickups spawn. Okay, so what else can we change here to make our code slightly more dynamic? Well, you can see here that we've got the 9999. Okay, because our play area is actually a 20 or 21 grid square. We know that it's a square. We know that it's going the same in the minus and the positive, and it's going the same up and down. So up here, I could create a new variable called private. We'll make it an integer once again, and we'll call this spawn range x, and we'll set that as 9. And I'm going to make a y one as well. We don't have to. I could just keep it as spawn. For now, I'll just keep it as spawn range right now. Okay. So in here, instead of using 9, I'm going to copy that. I'll change that to minus spawn range, which will be the same as minus 9. Set that to spawn range, minus spawn range, spawn range. Okay. Just run. We'll go back to Unity and make sure we haven't caused any errors. I think it's good to test often. This is an example of an expected test, in that when I run my code, I expect it to perform in a certain way when I run it. So it's an expected test. In this case, what I'm expecting to see is nothing has really changed. I've changed the code, but the game itself still performs in exactly the same way. So we'll go back to our game. We'll click on play. Hopefully we've got no errors. And we've got them. And they're still going out just as far. But just to show you how that's useful, let's say I changed the size of my game and made it smaller because I've got different levels or something like that. So I could now go to my code and I could change that to a 5. Save it. And go back into my game. Press play. And you can see they're all clustered in a much tinier space. Yeah, so it's yet again just another, getting those variables to the top of your code just makes it far easier to adjust things. It makes it more flexible and more dynamic. Okay, and in a way it makes the code slightly more robust because it means that I know this code works. I've tested it numerous times and I'm not changing this code anymore. I'm just gonna, if I want to change the number of pickups, I just change the number up here. I don't have to play with this code down here, therefore there's no chance of me breaking it, or less chance of me breaking it. And I don't have to change the spawn range there because I just change the number up here. Once again, less chance of breaking it. The last bit I really want to do in this piece of code is I want to go in here and do some commenting. Alright, it's important that we comment our code so that if I come back to it at a later date, or if somebody who's not me comes to look at this code, they have a way of understanding it without having to go through line by line by line. So I'm not going to comment each line because that wouldn't really achieve much, but I'm going to put a comment once again, // followed by a space, at the top of blocks of code explaining what this does. So what does this, well, I want to explain the behavior of it. I don't want to just write something like spawns the pickups. Okay, that describes it, but it doesn't really describe the behavior of this code. So I just want to add a little bit more details. So spawns the pickups in random locations by looping through number of pickup times. That's probably enough. I mean, it's one line of code, and it describes pretty much what's going on down here. Okay, anything else that needs to be commented? We do want to make sure that everything's tabbed over properly because, and we don't have extra spaces in here. These extra spaces in here make the code look a bit unreadable. There should be space between sections, so I think it's okay to have a space here because that's a special kind of, we'll give that a comment. So, capital start with declare game object references. Okay, we've got a there, we've got a comment there. That's probably all good. The last thing is the tabbing. Like if that's like that, that doesn't look very clear because to me that looks like this is now part of something else where it's not. It's only part of this game manager. Okay, so I want to make sure that's in line. For example, if I'm looking at a piece of code that looks like this, that's very hard to read because I'm not sure where the squiggly bracket begins and where it ends. Okay, because there could be, let's just bring it back even further. If I go like that, alright, that's hard to read because I don't know where I just get confused. Where does the for loop begin and end? Because we've got two squiggly brackets together there. So you want to make sure that tabbing is important. Each tab will be 4 spaces. Luckily for us, Visual Studio has a feature built into it. So if I go to Edit, Advanced, Format Document, it does all the tabbing for us. Okay, so while it's good to tab as you go along, if you're not 100% sure, you can go into, once again, Edit, Advanced, Format Document, and that will do it for you.